Welcome to Potter Revisited, episode 73. I'm Tori.
And I'm Shay.
Today we are covering chapter 13 of Goblet of Fire, Mad Eye Moody.
Or, as we like to call it, justice, vengeance, pettiness.
So this is basically our back to lessons chapter as Harry, Ron, and Hermione, they're back at Hogwarts and they're going back to school and they're starting all their lessons. And so chapter opens up with them in the Great Hall having their breakfast.
And poring over their times tables.
Hermione tells Harry and Ron they should have given up divination like her, and it's such a Hermione thing to say. She even says that oh, you should have given it up so you can take arithmancy because that's more practical or that's better.
Because Ron and Harry would totally take arithmancy.
It very much just seems like it's Hermione's kind of thing where she's like, I do all the right things, so you should have done what I did, which is the right thing.
It's kind of like you already have a core course load of courses you need to be taking, and there's so many electives, and she's telling them, what would be a fun, good, valuable elective? Have you thought about taking neuroscience? She's just picking the most difficult possible, it's all mathy and numbery, and they're out there trying to find something easy. Divination to me, despite maybe not being everything some people wish it was, is the perfect class to slack off in. It's dark, it's cozy, it's kind of like creative writing class when you do the homework. I mean, it might not be what they want, but it's a better option for them.
Yeah, Hermione doesn't find it fulfilling because it's too creative.
Yeah, it's not exact science, and she really only stands for the exact sciences.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Hermione, she's also eating again, and at the last chapter, she found out that there are house elves at Hogwarts that work in the kitchens, and she refused to eat dinner. But now she's eating breakfast, and it's alluded to that she is working on something that is a new solution for the Hogwarts house elves besides, doing a hunger strike. But as typical Hermione, she doesn't tell Harry and Ron anything.
Harry is talking about how he's not thrilled about going to divination because he's starting to find that the constant predictions of his death are becoming a little bit annoying. And that's such book Harry energy. I feel like film Harry takes a lot of things more seriously. He'd be like, oh no, a prediction of my death. No offense to Daniel Radcliffe, who played it exactly how he was told. But book Harry's kind of oh, I see. I'm dying again. Well, I was kind of hoping she'd predict good weather or that I would have good luck with the number 4. But I guess if my death is all that there is in the tables, then fine. He's just so irritated and bothered and bored and annoyed by it all at once. And I just love that energy. He's really giving us the right energy.
It's a classic Harry.
You get tired of your own death being predicted after a while, I suppose, especially as a mortal being, because I'm going to die at some point, such is the reality of being a, creature. Cell death does occur at some point, I'm sorry to tell you. So I'd be annoyed if someone was like, you're going to die. I'd be like, yes, I know, eventually.
But their first lesson today is Herbology, which is fun.
We have followed by Care of Magical Creatures, which is very exciting because that means their entire morning is outside. And that's really nice, in the warm months, to wake up and spend the day outside in the sun. I think that's a really fun and lucky turn of events for their schedules.
So we're introduced to the Blubertubers, which they do come back later on as a little thing. But I was just we have thoughts about this.
I mean, first of all, that name's dumb. Teletubbies is what it makes me think of. Or the wacky wavy inflatable arm flailing tube bands, but full of pus instead of wacky wavy air. It's gross. But picturing pus-filled growths on slug-like plants is just nope. I'm so not interested. I don't want a part of that. And the way the author describes the pus extraction process,
yeah,
it very much brings to light the fact that I think the author is one of those people that really enjoys going on YouTube and watching videos of people's pimples being popped. The way she describes it is so satisfying. I'm oh.
I mean, I'm kind of like that, to be honest.
Oh, I'm not. I don't need to see that.
I would want to do it, but I have watched Dr. Pimple Popper before.
Okay, so you are also one of those people, and that's fair. I won't judge you for it.
But we find out that the pus is used to help acne, and Eloise Midgen is referenced as she's the person that tried to curse her acne off.
Yeah, and then her nose fell off. And I just feel so bad for her because it's the teen years. You know what I mean? It's when you're really starting to feel insecure, specifically about your appearance. And I feel like knowing that there's magic that can do a lot of appearance changing things, I feel like it's probably a very common injury at Hogwarts for like the young teens to try and do some sort of like appearance based magic and hurt themselves because it's way over their current skill level. And like, it's got to be really, really dangerous, but also like, how can you not try it? Like, I'm sure at some point in every teenager's life, they go through a phase where they're like, this part of my face is what's wrong with me, because that's what society tells us. And like, I'm sure a lot of these kids try spells like that.
Growing up when we were like in middle school, you usually had like a class about like, just like you're changing bodies and
You're going to find hair in unexpected places. And I'm like where?
personal care and like hygiene kind of like tips and stuff. And I feel like Hogwarts probably should have had stuff about like don't try and curse your acne.
Yeah, if you're going to try anything to your face, go see Madame Pomfrey first, and she'll tell you why not to do that.
Moving on to care of magical creatures, Hagrid is back and he introduces blast-ended Skrewts, which is, a bad idea all around. But we talked a lot about Hagrid as a professor
Yeah.
in the last book we covered, and it's just right up his alley.
I think Hagrid thinks they're neat because they're kind of dangerous, but also he doesn't know what their purpose is, and I'm sure that's interesting to him. Like, I wonder what they do. I wonder this. And other people are like, okay, but if they have no purpose, why would we ever try and take care of them?
The only time that Malfoy and Hermione agree on something.
Yeah, but she can't let him know she agrees, so she has to argue him on it. Call him out.
Yeah, because it feels weird. Like, did Hagrid like breed these creatures and just decide like, oh, you know what? I don't know anything about these. What a fun class project for my fourth years.
Yeah. I've definitely done some pointless projects in my life.
Hagrid's just, so chaotic. He doesn't know what these animals, creatures do. He doesn't know what they eat. I think Jean gets like burnt or something or stung, and he's like, oh yeah, that can happen.
Cool, these random danger creatures have no purpose. Let's all hang out with them.
But after Care Magical Creatures, Harry and Ron, it's time for them to go to Divination.
I have to say, the vibes are on in the Divination classroom. It's cozy, it's warm, there's tea, there's incense. I could nap there.
Well, Harry kind of does. But I was thinking this is like the first time Harry really sees Professor Trelawney since the prediction she gave in Prisoner of Azkaban, which Dumbledore said was a real prediction. And as soon as he comes in, she's like, oh, I can tell, like, you're dreading something and it's probably going to happen. And he's like, great, thanks.
I feel like there's a certain level of like, understanding of your audience and like knowing how to communicate with different age groups that Trelawney is kind of missing.
Yeah.
Because she thinks maybe her skill and her ability gives her the right to sort of surpass normal social rules. But like, even if she was always right and she knew something horrible was going to happen to Harry, I feel like the better way to engage in that is say like, hey, I do see some turbulence. You just might want to be careful and think things through before making any rash decisions. Not say like, oh, you're doomed, you're dying. There are no hints on how to help you. There's no good advice. Like, you should have a more gentle way of breaking that news to someone that is also somewhat productive and not just like, there's doom, good luck.
But Trelawney's talking to them about stars and moon charts and everything.
Have you ever done your birth chart to get like all your horoscope details, sun sign, moon sign?
I don't think so.
Oh, I've done my birth chart. You have to know your time of birth too, though. So you have to ask your mom. But you fill out, the place you were born. Yeah, it's where you were born, when you were born. And then they tell you the alignment of the stars and it tells you things about yourself.
Yeah, but Harry's not paying attention until Ron kind of like, does the classic thing where like your friends like paying attention and you kind of like nudge them being like, they're talking to you. And what does Trelawney say to Harry?
Yeah, she basically says, because of your complexion, you must be born midwinter. Am I right? And Harry's like, no, because he's born in the summer.
Yeah, he's like, I was born in July. And it's so funny.
Yeah, it's like actually incorrect. But what's interesting is Voldemort was born on December 31st.
Yeah.
And like, there's a piece of Voldemort inside him. So if we're doing the old, is Trelawney always correct? Maybe she was just looking at the wrong piece of Harry. Where do you think Voldemort lives in Harry? I like to think it's like his spleen.
His spleen.
He has if theoretically, I'm just saying, Harry's big. He's bigger than all the other Horcruxes. So maybe it's just a specific part of Harry is the Horcrux. And I'm voting spleen.
Ron kind of has this moment where, Parvati and Lavender are really into divination, and Lavender's like, I found like another planet, and then Trelawney's like, oh, that's Uranus, and then Ron says, can I look at Uranus, Lavender? It's like such classic like class clown stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also funny like, knowing that they end up dating in like 2 years.
It's just, I just remember as a kid not finding the name Uranus funny, but when the teachers properly pronounced it as Uranus, I found that funny because, like, Urine's pee. Because Uranus was so over my head, I guess. I'm like, no, Uranus is a planet and Uranus is inappropriate.
But of course, the day can't end well for Ron because Malfoy corners him as they're waiting to go into the Great Hall for dinner about a Rita Skeeter article that he reads it loud in front of like everyone in the entrance hall, and it's just really awful.
Yeah, he's a bit of a prat.
Yeah, and like he insults like Ron's dad and Ron's mom, and so Harry's like, you know what, I got this, and he makes fun of Malfoy's mom, and then Malfoy gets like so mad about it. He's like, don't talk about my mom, and it's just like, okay, if you can't handle it,
You literally just started it.
yeah, like Malfoy can dish it out, but he can't take it.
He literally cannot at all. It's like he doesn't realize that the way he feels when someone shit talks his mother is the way he makes people feel when he shit talks theirs. Like, how dare you do to me what I don't get it. He's such a brat. He's such a brat.
But he gets his comeuppance because as he tries to curse Harry, he is then cursed by Mad Eye Moody coming down the stairs.
Yeah. As he honestly freaking deserves. And honestly, I'm kind of okay with Moody turning him into a ferret as punishment. Draco sort of purposely embarrassed Ron, so Moody showed him how it feels to be embarrassed, and I feel like the punishment fit the crime. I'm less okay with him whacking Ferret Malfoy against the ground because that's like physical abuse, abuse of power, just general abuse. Like, that's different.
Because I think this is the first time Malfoy's like really been like properly embarrassed. Because he's always coming after Harry and Ron, and like he's never really gotten like any real punishment for the stuff he does. I think McGonagall's given him detention before in book one, but other than that, like it's usually Snape, and Snape's not going to give him any punishment that's like befitting of like what he's doing.
Yeah, which is funny to an extent because you'd think Snape would be able to relate to being publicly embarrassed in such a way that he would almost overpunish someone like Malfoy in those situations, but he has too many political roles to play. He doesn't get to seek out his petty vengeance against anyone, so he can only seek it out against Harry Potter.
You also had a point here about Malfoy being turned into a ferret.
Oh yeah, I do. I think it's really funny that Malfoy's turned into a ferret, which is a member of the Weasel family, and I think that's funny because the connotation of calling someone a weasel is like a sneaky, untrustworthy, or insincere person. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of all checks out. Also, it's funny because he was sort of making fun of Ron for being a Weasley, and now everyone's making fun of him for being a weasel.
So I was wondering, because like it seems really interesting looking back, knowing that this Moody is an imposter Moody and is actually like a Death Eater in like impersonating Moody. So since this Moody's like fake, was there an ulterior motive for him attacking Malfoy besides like trying to get on Harry's good side or like protect Harry from any kind of harm coming to him?
Yeah,
Because he obviously knows who Malfoy is.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely makes him look cool to Harry,
Yeah.
which I think is important, but also like he might just like Barty Crouch might also generally dislike the Malfoys. I feel like even Death Eaters dislike the Malfoys. Like they're jerks. They're unlikable all around. Super duper jerks. And like I know Barty Crouch is a bad guy and we're supposed to be real mad about it and stuff, but it kind of feels like such a good solid like it was justice, it was vengeance, and it was pettiness. Like we got the justice for Ron's mom and family who were made fun of, kind of. We get vengeance because Ron's feeling vindicated, and we get pettiness because we as the readers are like, huzzah, take that, Draco. Like his suffering is our joy.
Finally, yeah, you deserve it. But Minnie G comes down and she's just like, "Oh, what are you doing?" He's like teaching, and so just Minnie G's gonna have like an aneurysm with Moody around.
Yeah.
A typical Dumbledore hire. But yeah, she puts a stop to it, and it's like you have to give them detention and talk to like their head of house. And I think it's interesting because there's two sides of Moody telling Malfoy, because Malfoy says like, my dad's gonna hear about this," and he's like, "I know your dad." And he also said that he's looking forward to talking to Snape, and it's like the real Moody would know both of these because they were Death Eaters.
Yeah.
But also fake Moody also knows them because they're Death Eaters.
I think it's interesting, first of all, knowing Lucius Malfoy. I bet Barty/Moody knows the type of like brat that Draco is just from knowing his father. And like we know Draco's gotten detention before and not learned not to be the worst. So I think that this consequence, like being transfigured and embarrassed, is going to be more memorable for him. And it might not turn Draco into a better person, but it will keep him from being such a monster in the presence of Mad Eye Moody. So like it's a more effective punishment than any of the others. And I really like how hyped Moody/Crouch is to get to go see Snape. He's like, oh, we're going to go see Snape. Love that guy. Can't wait to catch up. Old friends. And I bet Crouch, as a guy who does like thought Voldemort liked Snape more than he deserved, and as a guy who like hates that Snape's living on the outside, is like so excited to fool Severus Snape. Like, it's going to be such a self-esteem boost for this guy to like deceive the deceiver, you know?
Because he basically gets to like bully Snape around because he says like, "Oh, Dumbledore told me to keep an eye on you," and then Snape's like, "What the fuck, Dumbledore?"
Seriously.
After all the things that we've talked about in private, the aftermath of this is that Ron's just living his best life. He's like, "Don't talk to me. I want to remember this moment forever. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me."
Yeah. It is the best thing that's ever happened to Ron at this point in his life.
Yeah.
It's just good.
It's a pretty iconic moment in the series.
And like the fact that it was making fun of Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, who are so beloved and like seen as such innocents, it wasn't just Malfoy, a kid, making fun of the other kids.
Yeah, and it's such a low blow to come for someone's parents.
Yeah. So we're sort of like so ready for him to get his comeuppance, which he like never gets. There are never actual legitimate consequences for Draco Malfoy, and it's so validating to like see him actually get what he deserves for once.
Yeah, and we kind of end off the chapter with the twins and Lee, Jordan, their friend, coming over and telling Harry and Ron how awesome Mad Eye Moody is. They just had a lesson with him, and they're talking about like just how cool he is. He really knows his stuff, and it's just like a really like real life kind of experience. And I feel like from the twins and Lee, it takes a lot to impress them, and like the fact that they're just so awestruck makes Harry and Ron really jealous because Ron looks up their times table and he's like, I want to have like my dark arts lesson with Moody.
Yeah. I mean, kind of who doesn't? I kind of want to have my dark arts lesson with Moody too.
Yeah, so we can like leave off of that tease being like, oh, we got our first kind of taste of Mad Eye Moody and like what he's kind of going to be as a teacher, kind of a rogue, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it really is. I love that for him and for us, frankly, because it's what we deserve.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts before we wrap up?
Do I have other thoughts? This felt like a short chapter. I feel like we just like, but I love the class stuff. I love going to the classes. I mean, we don't get a lot of that because actual like plot happens, but I love the scene setting.
Yeah, later on in the series, there's too much stuff going on, but I do like the earlier books because they really go into detail about each class, and I love that stuff.
I love knowing like what their homework is and what they learned and like, oh, they're going to greenhouse 3. And then I imagine, wow, there's at least 3 greenhouses. And like, there's only one herbology teacher. So like, does she cycle through the greenhouses? She can't teach multiple classes at once. But I guess if different years students have different like long-term plant projects, she can have a greenhouse for each year. So like, oh, the mandrakes for 1 year students are in one greenhouse and she goes to the next greenhouse when they're working on the next plant. I don't know. We get to think about that. And I love thinking about all the like surrounding fun.
I love hearing all like the different professors and like their teaching styles, because Professor Sprout's just very much like, we're doing this is what I want you to do, and it's just very like practical direction. And you have Hagrid that's super chaotic.
Yeah.
And then you have Trelawney that's kind of just like, I don't know, talking shit half the time.
Yeah, but I don't think she knows she's talking shit. I think she really thinks she thinks she's helping.
Well, at least she believes she's talking truth.
She's like, good, look at me, really killing the game, letting Harry know he's doomed. You know, someone's got to tell him.
She's putting on a performance, and she really just wants people to be in awe of her, like Pavarti and Lavender are. But it's definitely the class that you're like in the back, like trying not to fall asleep.
Story of my life.
And also we got a little bit of Moody's teaching style too, which is just chaos.
Yeah, but fun. Like, they have a lot of boring teachers and they have a lot of like teachers that don't know how to teach. And it sounds like he's exciting and knows how to teach. So that's something. Even if he is a terrible person and a murderer, he's a good teacher.
In another life.
Crouch could have been a teacher.
But yeah, thanks for listening to this episode of Potter Revisited, and we'll be back next time to discuss Chapter 14, The Unforgivable Curses.
Oh, those are good.
Yeah, it's going to be a deep one, I'm sure. But if you have any thoughts, you can email us at potterrevisitedpodcast@gmail.com or reach out on social media at Potter Revisited, and we will see you next time.
Bye.